Today is World Autism Day, and we are celebrating on the special report. World Autism Day is a day where member states of the United Nations are encouraged to raise awareness about people with autism spectrum disorder throughout the world. The day has been recognized since 2007 and is one of only 7 official health-specific United Nations days. Today, autism organizations and advocates from all parts of the globe will come together to push for more resources, research, diagnosis, treatment, and acceptance of people with autism and related disorders. And at the special report, we are here for it. All coming up next.
Live from Los Angeles, this is the Special Report.
Today, 1 in 54 children are diagnosed with autism. Boys are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed than girls, and although autism affects all ethnic and socioeconomic groups, as you have heard me say before, African Americans are diagnosed 3 to 4 years later than their white peers. Although there is no cure for autism, early interventions and a host of therapies can greatly improve learning, communication, and social skills, as well as underlying brain development. Unfortunately, there is so much misinformation and myths about autism and people who are on the spectrum. But my guests today are debunking those myths and are thriving. Here for my leadoff panel is Carrie Magro. Kerry is an award-winning author and public speaker. He was diagnosed with autism at 4 years old. He has overcome incredible obstacles to get where he is today. Kerry is a doctorate. He has a doctorate degree in education. He's the founder of the KFM Making a Difference Foundation, and he focuses on disability advocacy and housing. Good morning and welcome, Kerry.
Well, I'm so glad to be on, and thanks for having me.
You have such an impressive resume. Just putting aside someone with autism, very few people in this country ever earned their doctorate degrees. Give us some sense, Kerry, of how difficult it was for you to get where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just goes back to when I was 4 years old, when I got that diagnosis of PDD-NOS, a form of autism. I was nonverbal till I was 2.5 and didn't start speaking complete sentences till I was 7. So along with communication barriers, I also had a ton of sensory challenges. But luckily, I had the support of a strong family network, and then also occupational, physical, speech, music, and theater therapy from 4 until I was just graduating high school at 19, and now I can say I'm just 1% of the country who have a doctorate and have a job as a public speaker, getting to travel the globe.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, Kerry. You said you didn't start speaking until you were 2.5. And just to give people some perspective, I'm a mother of 3. Kids start speaking really early. So 2.5 is late. It's not like 4, but it is later than most kids. And now to go from not speaking until 2.5 to being a public speaker who's given TED Talks and who travels the globe speaking, you know, how do you feel when you look back to those early days and the challenges you had with your sensory issues and communication to now being this renowned public speaker?
It still feels like a dream. I keep pinching myself because I never expected this to be my life. I got my undergraduate and master's degrees at Seton Hall University, and I wanted to go into sports. I wanted to be the next Larry Bird, and I was so optimistic about doing something in the sport as a sport career. But then I realized that there were a lot of people being underserved in our disability community, and I wanted to be a voice to kids who really don't have the opportunities at times to really stand up for themselves.
Well, not only are you a renowned public speaker, you've written 2 books, Defining Autism from the Heart and Autism and Falling in Love. I'm so glad you wrote this book about falling in love, because I think one of the myths that people have is that somehow people on the autism spectrum, you know, don't need love, don't fall in love, don't have love interests. Help us understand how untrue that is.
It couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, the biggest misconception I hate hearing is that people with autism lack empathy. While some individuals do have challenges with that, some of the people I know who are on the autism spectrum are some of the most empathetic people I've ever met. So getting to write a book on self-advocacy for my first book and then relationships on my second about me navigating love on the spectrum was really, really important to me because my mentees, 9 times out of 10, they don't want to talk about mock interviews. They want to talk about the cute boy and cute girl and how they go about getting into a relationship. So I wanted to write something because I realized there were limited resources talking about this subject.
Yeah, it's so true. So many parents struggle, Kerry, with how to even talk about sex and relationships with their kids. So having a book out there that breaks down some of those barriers and breaks the ice and gives parents even permission to talk about that, I think is amazing. Something else on your resume that caught my attention is that you are a movie consultant, that you actually consulted on the movie A Joyful Noise.
Yes.
Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, it was a really amazing experience. One of the therapies that helped me tremendously growing up was theater therapy. And once I started blogging and coming out to people for the first time about having autism, I got in contact with a movie director named Todd Graff, and he was like, I have this 14-year-old person of color who's on the autism spectrum, who's going to be one of the characters in the film. And can you bring a realistic portrayal? Can you look over the script? Can you help us cast the character and really just make sure representation was in that film? And I was like, I'm 23 years old. Absolutely. Let's start it. Let's get going. And it's given me the opportunity to work in this line of work for almost a decade. And my second film, Jane Wants a Boyfriend, I was so happy to get the opportunity to work on that because I just wrote my book on autism and falling in love. And Jane Wants a Boyfriend focused on a 25-year-old with autism trying to find love in New York City. So I was kind of just so thrilled that we finally had an entertainment resource to talk about that. It was really great.
And that therapy you mentioned, did you call it theater therapy, Kerry? Okay.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Help people understand what that is. I mean, it sounds like you get to go and hang out and watch movies all day.
Well, for so many people in our community, they actually use theater and music therapy almost hand in hand due to sensory challenges. So theater therapy is really a therapeutic way of helping individuals understand the perspectives of others, because so many individuals with autism, such as myself growing up, had mind blindness and not being able to understand the perspectives of others. So theater therapy can be done via an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, and it's really about the importance of helping not only from the communication perspective, but also being able to understand the perspectives of the world around them.
Yeah, I want to bring into the conversation now Dwayne Cox, the second. Dwayne was diagnosed with autism at 3, and he's a recent graduate from Loyola Marymount College, and he's now working as an actor, a screenwriter, and he writes rap lyrics. Good morning, and welcome to the show, Dwayne.
Good morning, Miss Martin. It's an honor to be here.
Well, first of all, full disclosure, I have known Dwayne since he was a little bitty boy. I actually had the honor and the privilege of representing his family as they were trying to get, him diagnosed and get him services in public school. So I know his family well. I actually featured his family story in my first book about autism called The Everyday Advocate. So when I sit here, Dwayne, and look at you all grown up, having graduated from college, my mind is just blown. But tell us, what was it like for you? We just heard Kerry's story. What was it like for you growing up with autism and being able to matriculate at such a prestigious college like Loyola Marymount?
Well, growing up, because I was diagnosed at such a young age, I didn't really have any understanding of what implications having autism would mean growing up. And, I just knew that at that point in my life, I was visiting a lot of doctors' offices, more than my peers were. So my parents, when I was old enough to understand it, I was in my own world for most of my life. So it didn't really hit me that I had autism until I was getting into high school or college, where there were very intricate, more social settings. And so there were social rules and social norms that one had to follow, and little idiosyncrasies about people. and there's no instruction manual to be had. Well, other than the ones that were just listed just now, but
other than Carrie's book and my book, okay, right. They weren't around when you were growing up.
They weren't. Yeah, they weren't. So, and I really appreciate that there's steps being taken now. But growing up, you kind of had to figure out things for yourself, and that is something that's I feel has definitely formulated who I am as a person. And so growing up, it's kind of been sort of a journey because I myself had speech trouble as a child too. I got help from a behavioral therapist named Linda Diamond to kind of help me get to a certain point. It used to be very hard for me to type and read and write as a kid. But because of the support system from both my parents, from you, from a whole army of people that have sort of helped me formulate my skill set to get me to where I am now. And now I can probably write 15-page papers in a matter of days. So it's
wow.
And so it takes a village.
Yeah, I want to shout out your parents, Dr. Dwayne Cox and Naomi Cox, because all the individuals that you're going to meet on this show this morning got here because they had amazing parents who weren't just parents, but they were actually parent advocates. And that's what's so important to the success of individuals with autism. And they can thrive. As you can see, Dwayne and Kerry are thriving. But we can't leave out the incredible work of their parents. Kerry, I want to ask you about representation, though. What do you think about The Good Doctor and shows like that? Do you think they're doing something good for the autism community?
Oh, how long do you have? No, it's.
Give me a 30-second response.
I know. So really, my whole perspective is that we need to focus on the spectrum of autism. Stephen Shore is a dear friend, and if you met one individual with autism, you met just that one individual with autism. It's his famous quote. I see my parents, when I was growing up, they saw Rain Man. That was their first idea of what autism was. So they assumed everyone was good at math. Everyone who's 21 would take you to Las Vegas with them and win you a lot of money at blackjack. And that is not the entire autism spectrum. So as much as I appreciate The Good Doctor, and I'm a fan, I've been watching all the episodes for the past 4 seasons, I definitely think it would be great to have more national networks discussing more about the spectrum of autism, level 3 autism, individuals who are more, who need more support needs than potentially somebody like Sean Murphy on The Good Doctor.
What do you think, Dwayne? You study filmmaking in school. You have a double degree in history and filmmaking. You are a filmmaker. We got some amazing shots of you on the ground working it out with your camera. What do you think about The Good Doctor and shows like that?
I've had a lot of discussions with my family about this, believe it or not. And the thing that I've sort of formulated, the theory that I've formulated for myself is, because I'm a screenwriter as well, and they always tell you to write a character first, instead of just, whatever trait he may or may not have. Because of all the amazing reasons that, Carrie had just listed, as to why there's this sort of stigma, in a sense, against autistic characters, it's also complicated to write them because of the individuality that each person on the spectrum has. No one person's going to have the exact same experience. So it's very hard for somebody to feel represented in such a wide spectrum. So, of course, you want a character who can sort of break against the norms that have been established. But at the same time, you're going to have that little pitfall. He's not going to be wholly like somebody else, as he or she probably should not be. But I think to myself, of the autism portrayals we've seen on film and TV, I can count on one hand the amount of people of color on the spectrum.
Come on.
I can also count on maybe less than 3 fingers the amount of female.
Yep.
I'm just saying that whenever you think autism character in TV, it's generally, I'm just saying, white male, certain look, certain disposition about him. And that's virtually the only thing that's been seen when it's such a wide spectrum that touches such a wide ethnic diversity that
I'm so glad you said that, Dwayne, because, my son Marty's on the spectrum. And when we got Marty's diagnosis, I actually thought autism was exclusively a white male disorder, because you didn't even see people on covers of magazines or newspapers when they were talking about autism, represent people of color, Black kids, Latinx kids, Asian kids. It was all white kids. And you thought it was like the disease or disorder of super wealthy, smart white folks, not just your average everyday white people. These Beverly Hills type, wealthy white people. So, but to your point about women, on the special report, we have female actors on the spectrum. So I want to bring on one. Her name is Spencer Hart. She's a gifted singer. She's a songwriter and an actress. You've seen her on Atypical. She's been on Parenthood, and she's in a new movie. Good morning, Spencer, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Good morning, Ms. Areva.
Well, Dwayne says that there's not enough female characters on the spectrum represented in film and TV. Tell us about some of the projects that you've been involved in.
I've been on. I was in the peer group on Atypical, and I just came back from New York for a film called Sissy. I played a character who has bipolar, CP, and I'm so glad to be on the show with you.
Thank you so much, Spencer. So, Spencer, we know in addition to acting, we got some great photos of you actually surfing. So in addition to doing your songs, your music, and you've, oh my God, you sing so beautifully. We've actually given you an award, Special Needs Network, for your advocacy. What are some of the other things that you like to do that people maybe think, kids or young adults like yourself with autism don't do? We know you surf. What else do you do in your spare time?
I like to draw pictures. And I like to make stuff out of yarn, like bracelets. And I like to read books.
Okay, so you're a reader. So, Kerry, you heard Spencer say that she's in a new film. How difficult is it for someone like Spencer on the spectrum to even, she must have an agent, you got a manager, she's flying to New York. So she's like, SAG, she's got the whole 9 yards going here. How amazing is this?
This is totally amazing.
Well, Spencer, I have to say you are incredible. I've seen you on Atypical, so congratulations on your work there.
Thank you.
What I will say is the Rudderman Family Foundation did come out with a study a few years ago that said that less than 1% of disabled actors were actually playing disabled characters on television. And even though that number has actually gone up since they updated the study, it's still a very lack of disabled and autistic individuals getting an opportunity to play these roles, and even harder in many instances to even get an audition. So again, it's really actually, you said it, getting an agent is really, really key. Knowing several autistic actors, the importance of getting that foot in the door with an agent is really, really important. But then at the end of the day, just keeping your eyes and ears out there for as many potential projects as possible, and not getting discouraged as well, because like any actor, it's going to be challenging at times to land a role. So just keeping a positive mindset.
Well, Spencer, we know she's worked with celebrities like actor and musician Jack Black. She's been in some pretty powerful rooms. Who are some of the others that you've worked with, Spencer?
Brad Pitt, Pete Davidson.
Wow. Okay.
And Carol Kane. and B.D. Wong. And I want to thank and I cannot do anything without my mom and you too.
Oh, well, there goes that mom theme again. We keep hearing about these mothers. Dwayne, we are here today because we're celebrating World Autism Day. What do you want the world to know about, your experiences, what you've learned about Kerry and Spencer? What should people know about the importance of World Autism Day?
I feel like it's something that just people need to understand that we are still people at the end of the day. And that we live the world in a different light that's not common to what everybody else sees it as. And there may be one thing that you could actually learn from somebody with autism that allows you to see the world in a different way than everyone else. It's all about perspective. And it's funny because listening to Spencer's story, I feel like we should probably talk a lot more, because I actually auditioned for the lead role in Atypical a long while back.
Oh, cool.
And, I have yet to really view the show in its entirety. I know my little brother, who's also on the spectrum, and my mother watch it. And so I could probably point you out to them. But also and this is just like actor speak, I just finished auditioning for another role for Jason Katim's project. He's the showrunner of Parenthood.
Yes.
I know Jason Katims.
We know Jason well. We've honored Jason at Pink Pump. So we know and we love Jason and the work that he's done.
Yes, I just auditioned for one of his projects.
Wow, that's impressive.
So hopefully, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Me too.
I'll give you the last word, Kerry. What do you want people to know on World Autism Day? What do people need to know about autism?
They need to know that spectrum, but they also need to know that there are so many organizations that have been promoting autism awareness for so very, very long, but we need to get to a point where these individuals are accepted, understood, and inclusion is key. When every single person has their voice at the table, it just makes for a better world in general when we speak about diversity. So the importance of not only promoting autism awareness as the first step, but acceptance, understanding, because individuals like me just want chances to succeed in this world, just like anybody else.
Eloquently said. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much, Dwayne. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Spencer. You are all amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
love you.
With on World Autism Day. Good luck to all of you, Dwayne. We're going to see you in that Jason Katims project. We're crossing our fingers for you. Spencer, we'll be looking for you in your new movie. And Kerry, who knows where you're going to probably across the globe somewhere giving one of those great TED Talks. Again, thanks to all of you. Wow. Now I want to bring on someone. We're talking about diversity and inclusion and people breaking barriers. My next guest is a barrier breaker. He made national headlines by becoming the first student athlete with autism to sign a letter of intent for a Division I basketball team. And if you don't have kids in sports, I just want you to know this is huge. Even if you don't have autism, to get into a D1 school for basketball is incredibly difficult. He is now in his second year at Kent State, and I want to welcome to the show Kalin Benton. Good morning, Kalin. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. So you and I were together at a big gala that Holly Robinson Pete gave for her foundation. You were getting an award. I was getting an award. I was just shocked. First of all, you're like 6 feet, 10 inches tall, so you're super tall.
Yes,
what was it like growing up, having autism, and then being this, super tall kid, taller than everyone, I'm sure, in every class you were in?
It was cool. I mean, I didn't really tell anybody I was on the spectrum. I mean, getting with my mom, my dad, I saw some NBA games on TV. I said, I want to be like those people on the TV. So, my mom, my dad, they worked really hard, especially my mom. She put me in a position to succeed every single time. And, I just started killing. I just started playing against so many different athletes that are in the league now, or they are big time now. And for me to feel like I can be in that circle with them and call them brothers or ask them advice whenever I need to, it's just awesome. And then to announce to everybody like, hey, I know that you feel this way since you're on the spectrum. I know you're struggling with this, but I want you to know you're not alone. And for it to take full circle like this, it's just a blessing.
Wow. So you were 18 when you became like the first student, in history with autism, to play Division I basketball. What was it like when you got that first letter of interest from a D1 school? What did that make you feel like?
It was a lot. I mean, it was a lot of schools that were just reaching to me, and because of my basketball skills, and me being a basketball player who loves the game, and they didn't even know I was on the spectrum, like I just said. So when I told them that, it just grew a lot of new opportunities for a lot of kids on the spectrum to let them know, like, hey, if I can do it, you can do it too. Because I don't see autism as a disability. I see it as a new ability. So I just really just take my time and just letting people know and encouraging them and let them know they can do it.
Okay, I got to repeat that. I love that. You said you don't see autism as a disability. You see it as a new ability. And that is such an incredibly positive, I think, way to frame, kids who are on the spectrum and to give them hope that they can do something big like you. You made People magazine when you made your first point in a game. So, I mean, you've been in the news a tremendous amount. How have your teammates, do they get a little jealous because all of this attention you're getting?
I mean, I don't know, but for the most part, they be really happy for me because, once you generate something like that, it helps everybody. What team means, together everyone achieves more. And so when one person wins, everybody wins. And, it just creates a limelight for everybody to succeed. And I love seeing people around me succeed. It just creates a joy in me. So when I see my brother win, it just makes me happy. So
I know that in addition to being a phenomenal basketball player, you have a lot of other interests. You like music, you play the drums, you play guitar, you were learning to play the piano, and you love math. So how do you have time to, do all these extra hobbies, given that you're a college student?
I mean, I love math. I love music because, music frees the mind. So a lot of times it puts you in that space where it just gives you a sense of peace. And, my mom is a singer. My mom is a gospel recording artist. So whenever she needs me to play an instrument, I go play it whenever she needs me to. And also, I started my own, charity, Spectrum 50. And that was a dream of mine to let kids know, you're not alone, to encourage young adults on the spectrum that you're not alone in this fight. And it's just a lot of things that I used to love doing has now just come together. And now I'm just coming up with these new ideas to, help other kids on the spectrum. It's becoming a real joy to do.
So I heard you're headed to Morehouse College. You're going to be a Morehouse man.
Yes, ma'am. There was a lot going on decision, but it was more than basketball, honestly. Because, we live in a world where, social justice and all the stuff we go through, not just African Americans, but a lot of people in the minorities, we go through a lot of racial hate and everything. And I felt as if going to a school like Morehouse with a lot of history and, starting in 1867, which was years after slavery, I feel like going there really helps me learn the reason why we fight so hard for what we are and who we are. So I just feel like going there and being a basketball player also is a bonus to go and make it so much more fun. So.
All right. Kalin, I don't know if it's MBA, I don't know if it's a PhD, law degree, medical degree, whatever, but I know you're going to be doing big things. And you mentioned your mom. I've met your mom. She's an amazing woman. And again, every one of my guests this morning have been talking about what incredible champions their mothers have been. So a big shout out to your mom. Keep killing it on the court, killing it in the classroom, being a representative for other kids on the spectrum. I want to get you and Spencer and Kerry and Dwayne together. All four of you all need to meet. So much synergy there. You all are doing such incredible things, different parts of the country. But I want to thank you for joining me this morning. Keep being a bright light. You are such a bright light. And
thank you.
It's been my pleasure to sit down and talk with you this morning. So keep me posted on how Morehouse goes.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Great time there. All right. Boy, I am so inspired talking to these young people who are doing amazing things. Now I got to bring on some experts. I have one of my good friends. She's Dr. Ashubatra. She's on the board of Special Needs Network, and she's also a developmental pediatrician right here in Los Angeles. And then I have Dr. Stephen Shore. You heard Kerry mention Dr. Shore. He's a renowned autism expert. He's a researcher, author, and professor at Adelphi University. And he happens to be on the spectrum himself. Good morning, Dr. Batra and Dr. Shore. I have to start with you, Anshu. Could you imagine a world where we're talking to young people who are focused on social justice issues, who are auditioning to be in, a network series, who are in movies. I'm just sitting here, my mind is exploding.
I'm blown away, I have to tell you, Areva. I was sitting listening to all these accomplished young people, and I'm blown away. Something that really struck me was when Kerry was talking about when his parents started the journey and all they knew about autism was Rain Man. And I think that, again, when you and I started our personal journeys with our own sons, I have to say, I think that was the state of affairs of autism. That was what I think the world thought. That's what professionals thought. And so it's been lovely and inspiring for me to see this generation of individuals on the spectrum thriving and inspiring people.
Yeah, and Dr. Shaw, we don't want to give people the false impression that every kid with autism is, graduating from college, getting a PhD, playing Division I basketball, or, has an agent and working in Hollywood. Give us a sense of what autism looks like for kids who are not thriving and are not at the level of the kids we've talked to this morning.
That's a very good question. And what I believe is that everybody on the autism spectrum has the potential to lead a fulfilling and productive life. And what our job is, whether we're autistic advocates, whether medical professionals, actors, whoever we are in the autism community, is to promote the idea that leading and fulfilling and productive lives can become the rule rather than the exception. Yeah. And one example I have is a fellow in Florida I know of who would be diagnosed today with autism needing supports at level 2 or 3, so he's significantly affected. He needs support for communication, maintaining his schedule, for transportation in many aspects of his life. But he has this interesting interest in taking clothes out of a hot dryer and folding them perfectly. And he does it faster and better than anybody else. And I know many people who would like help with their laundry, and he'd love to help you too.
Right.
However, you have to pay him to do it because that is his job. He spends days in a hot laundromat, pulling clothes out of a hot dryer, folding them better and faster than everybody else. He's enjoying it, and everybody else is enjoying it. So as Carrie talked about, we first become aware of autism when it's in our midst, be it at home, in school, in the community, employment, and in our lives. And then we accept these characteristics. And instead of trying to change them, which we can't do, but we can work with them. So like this fellow, it must be a sensory thing. He likes the feeling of hot clothing out of a dryer. Yeah. And then we get to the next A, which is appreciation. And that is people, society appreciates what he contributes to society.
Yeah. And Dr. Batra, I want to ask you, how many adults, and especially adult women, who are on the spectrum but maybe don't know it? And do you think if we talked about it in different ways, that it may encourage people who would be identified on the spectrum to seek help and to seek a diagnosis?
Yeah, I think we're learning now that there are far more than we think, and I think just traditionally girls tend to be maybe not as recognized, partly because of our social structures and I think our own biases, that boys are more affected than girls. And so girls tend to go under the radar a little bit, and they're diagnosed a little later. So I think it is important that we recognize. And I mean, I've had parents as adults who I'm seeing their children, and they themselves then are recognizing some traits that they've been struggling with, and then they themselves then go get identified and evaluated, and I think it's important because it helps. As Stephen said, it's not about a diagnosis defining you; it's about understanding the strengths of someone, and learning what each person's gifts are, and then helping them be as inclusive and have as meaningful a life as possible in our society.
Stephen, I saw a really startling statistic that said autism rates have continued to rise over the last 2 decades. And they said it's not because we're getting better at, testing, which is the theory that some folks have had, is that we have better diagnostic tools. But they said even, controlling for that there has been a rise. How do you explain that?
Well, it's nobody really knows, which is why there's so much controversy. Which is why we have people looking at correlations and sometimes forgetting about the causation piece. So, for example, there's great correlation between when vaccines are given and when what I call the regressive autism bomb explodes, like what happened with me when I lost functional communication at 18 months. And in short, became a very autistic little kid. But the question is, what is the causation? And so some people think that it may have something to do with the environment. Are we mucking up the environment in some way? Is that part of it? Because we are seeing an increase in diagnoses of various other conditions that people have as well.
And I just want to, before I let you go, Dr. Batra, just try to debunk some of the myths that are out there. So Stephen mentioned what happened to him in terms of, a correlation between vaccine and his diagnosis with autism. But we know scientists have said there's no causation as it relates to vaccines and autism. But what are some of the other myths that are common? Just give us 1 or 2 that on World Autism Day we should be, as professionals and as experts, debunking.
Well, I think one of our guests mentioned it, that individuals on the spectrum don't have empathy. I think that's important to understand that people on the spectrum have a lot of empathy. They may show it a little differently. Other myths are that people on the spectrum don't want to have relationships. I think that's a big one. I know you and I having young adult sons. I think it's becoming much more evident, and they want relationships just like everyone else. It just may look a little different, and they may need to acquire it a little differently.
Yeah, so that's really important, because that whole conversation of love, and that's why I'm glad Kerry wrote that book.
Yes.
Dr. Shaw, just ask you the last question. For a parent that's out there that may, be concerned about their kid's development, what are the 2 or 3 most important indicators that a kid may have autism, or definitely that a parent should be seeking a diagnosis?
All right, well, I think the biggest thing to home in on, but one of the biggest things to home in on is reciprocity. And that is reacting to somebody else in a person's presence. So, for example, when I was diagnosed and recommended for institutionalization, fortunately, my parents refuted those professionals' recommendations in favor of what we would today term as an intensive home-based early intervention program, emphasizing music, movement, sensory integration, narration, and imitation. And that's just today's terminology. In those days, the concept of early intervention didn't exist. But I would say their breakthrough was when they realized that getting me to imitate them didn't work. And maybe perhaps due to a difference in mirror neurons, it may be hard for many of us to imitate when we're really young. So my parents flipped it around and they imitated me. Once they did that, I became aware of them in my environment, and then they were able to move me along. And I believe the implication is that as a prerequisite for doing authentic and solid work with an autistic person, you have to meet them where they are first. You develop a trusting bond first, and then you can move on. And I believe that that's something that holds true for everybody, whether autistic or not.
That is such amazing advice. And you both probably know Dr. B.J. Freeman, who was, preeminent autism doctor at UCLA for decades. That was some of the best advice she gave me when she diagnosed my son, Marty. She said, you guys need to incorporate Marty into your life and make him a part And so many families, I think, struggle with doing that because, they thought the kid should be in a bubble. And what we now know, and our earlier guests have demonstrated, kids with autism have unlimited potential. It's up to us as adults, though, to tap into it and, nourish it and support it, and then just watch them thrive. Thank you so much, Dr. Batra. Thank you, Dr. Shaw, for joining us this morning. This is World Autism Day, and we are celebrating, and we're so happy to have both of you. Your voices are so important to the autism community. All right. I just want to thank all of my guests this morning. These young people that you guys had a chance to meet are living examples of the unlimited potential of all children, with lots of love, with understanding, and the appropriate supports. We call it early intervention. Kids with dreams can grow up to be adults with influence. All of my guests today are indeed influencers. Their stories are inspiring generations of kids. Just some words to live by before I get out. I can show you better than I can tell you. See, after my son Marty was diagnosed with autism, I was so incredibly devastated. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't say the word autism. I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't do anything. I just really spent months and months just crying and being so sad and so depressed. And that's a story that we hear from so many parents. But with the help of a lot of people who cared about me, I was able to turn my anguish into advocacy. And for the last 15 years, I've had the privilege of running Special Needs Network, the nonprofit that actually sponsors this program. And through Special Needs Network and the team, the incredible team, men and women, the board members, the staff, we've been able to provide help to hundreds of thousands of kids and families throughout the state of California and really throughout the country through our grassroots advocacy programs, our direct services, ABA programs, and all of the programs that we do that put the child and the parents at the center of the care that we provide. I am just so grateful to the team, the parents at Special Needs Network that I have the honor and privilege to work with on a daily basis. These are some of the most incredible and selfless human beings on the planet. So I want to close the show today with a slideshow because I said I can show you better than I can tell you. So I want to give you a glimpse of the work of Special Needs Network. Again, so very proud of this organization. We started with a tiny little desk in a corner in my law firm, and we now have over 140 employees working all over this state to bring help, to bring services, to bring resource, and to bring inspiration to millions of families who have kids and adults on the autism spectrum. I hope you enjoy this show. Be safe out there, wear your mask, and remember, we're all in this together.